Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit that subscribe button if you're new so you don't miss any of our great football content this season. So I want to get into the Micah Parsons trade, and this is why I supported what the Cowboys did. As you know and our fans know, everybody has different windows. When I started the volume, we couldn't take huge swings. We didn't have the revenue. We didn't even have a sales department. Now we do. There are different windows for companies, for teams, for franchises, for people in their life. In your 20s, some guys don't want to get married. They want to be all career. By your 30s, you're thinking about kids and getting married. We all have different windows and timelines. So Dallas, the last two free agency periods, John, had no flexibility. And my take is in the NFL, that's one of the reasons the Chiefs let Tyreek Hill go and why Howie Roseman is constantly letting good players go, keeping the great ones, but he's always making deals because Howie wants flexibility. Well, the last 2 years, the Cowboys have had none of it. What would they have had if they signed Micah to $47 million? Now, they offered him 40, but this team could not pay Derrick Henry $8 million, and they had unquestionably the worst running back room in the league. So my take is they liked Micah. They offered him 40. But to get 2 firsts, that's now 4 firsts in the next 2 years. And by the way, after watching Nussmeier and a Sam Levitt, the quarterback at Arizona State, if they end up being one of the 6 to 7 worst teams, they may be able to get a quarterback with their first pick and the next Micah with their next pick in the first round. I mean, this is a draft where if you're drafting in the top 8, you don't have to move up to get potentially a really good quarterback. So in Green Bay, in an incredibly deep, well-coached offensive division with Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, Ben Johnson, Green Bay needs a playmaker on the edge to get offenses off the field. And they, in our lifetime, take out Reggie White. They just don't have. Kenny Clark's a good interior defender against the run. Cowboys can't stop the run. Kenny Clark comes in. Green Bay needs a playmaker on the edge to get offenses off the field and get it back to Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love. So I thought it worked for both teams. Dallas's defense was bad with Micah. It'll be atrocious without him. But my take is, the time to move a superstar is in a rebuild year. And isn't it clearly a rebuild year?
Well, can we just lay one thing on the table? Is because most of the reaction has been pretty universal. How could you trade Micah Parsons? There are untradeable players in the history of this league. Walter Payton, Reggie White, Deion Sanders, guys in their prime. Right. They're just unstoppable. That is not. You can run at Micah Parsons. He is not Reggie White. He's not even the best player at his position in the league.
No, by the way, you could argue initially, John, they put him at a stack linebacker inside, and that people didn't think he had good eyes. They didn't think he anticipated well. So they pretty much let him be a pass rusher. Well, he's not as big as Hutchinson. He's not as big as Myles Garrett. I would argue he's a bit undersized, but they let him kind of play that see the ball, attack the ball position, and it works. But he's a tradable player.
100%. He's a great athlete, and he's an instinctive pass rusher. But, if there's 70 plays in the game, they're not all 70 pass attempts on 3rd and 10. So we've seen in the playoffs, people run at him. That being said, I think the issue that I have with this situation is anytime you trade a player of this magnitude, like they did with Khalil Mack too, right before you're getting future first-round picks. You have no clue where they're going to be. They could be excellent. We saw with Russell Wilson, they ended up in Matt Stafford trade. They go really high because the team has an injury, but they also could be back-to-back picks in the mid-20s. When you trade a guy before the draft, one, you have more people coming to the table to be interested in the trade because there's more teams with cap room, and you can know exactly, at least that given year, where that pick lands, so you can value it. I do feel it was. Do you think there was any influence on Jerry with this documentary coming out? And because you watch that documentary, you go, God, Jerry in his heyday, that guy was sharp. That guy was a maverick. That guy was willing. And Jerry's kind of been, a lot of people, rightfully so, have been like, yeah, Jerry's kind of scared to do deals. Well, because a lot of people, I bet my 401k, my aggression, looks a lot different than yours. Right? I mean, right. Looks a lot different than a guy that's 75 years old. Jerry is just at a point in time in his life. But I wonder if he's like, oh, you think I won't do this? And obviously once Micah, you can't convince me when Micah showed up eating nachos and then laid on the training table. Jerry's old, stubborn, and the deal wasn't going that well in terms of the negotiation. It was kind of like a double FU. So he's just like, okay, we're willing to trade him, and then they did.
Micah's agent is also an agent that has gotten his clients good money, and I think he's the Deshaun Watson's agent, if I recall. So he signed a couple of deals where the teams look back a year later and don't like the deal. Now, I do think Micah off the edge is exactly what Green Bay needs. Again, Ben Johnson, Kevin O'Connell, Dan Campbell and that old line. These offenses can keep your offense off the field. So I like what Green Bay did. And the other thing about Green Bay is that they've always been able to build good football teams. I mean, for years they only drafted defense in the first round, and yet they had great O-lines and excellent tight ends. And Green Bay drafts and develops very well, second round, third round, fourth round. There are teams in this league, and when Bill Polian ran the Colts, they nailed their first two picks every time. Middle rounds, meh. But Green Bay has shown a history to pick up starters in the fourth and fifth and sixth round at a much higher percentage than the rest of the league over the last 30 years. So I think what they're telling you, Green Bay likes this roster, and they think they got about a 2 to 3 year window to make hay. So they're rarely aggressive. I tip of the cap to Green Bay going for it.
I think a lot of people, if you're a Packer fan, was like, where was this move mid Aaron Rodgers? Right? Because that was our window, and that was a big reason that a lot of people are critical of Ted Thompson. It's like, God, he's just kind of a wuss, kind of conservative. When's he going to take a big swing? And now they finally do it with Jordan Love. We'll see if it works out. I like the Packers before this move. I text a lot of people in the league asking them their thoughts. One universal take was, he's not like a troublemaker or anything, but Micah Parsons isn't. Albert Breer reported about this. When Zach Martin, when Dak went through this, the locker room loves the guy. That was not the reaction internally, according to this. And I had a GM who's very successful text me like, listen, Green Bay, their organizational culture has been elite for 30 years. It's been very consistent. It's just an easy place to operate. They're bringing in Micah, who comes from a culture where it's just all over the map in Dallas.
Yep. I was told the same thing.
Into Micah Parsons, bringing him in there, he is now making way more money than everybody. They have an unproven, still quarterback who, your quarterback's always kind of the leader of the team. He's like, there is some risk involved when you factor in the finances, when you factor in this big personality. He now is the face of the team. It's a pretty, it would have been, his point was like, it would have been easier if you had Aaron, even if this guy at the time, whatever the economics were, was making more than Aaron, but Aaron's the face of the team. Mike is now immediately the face of the team. Say what you want about the Cowboys before this trade, still Dak was, when you turn on Sunday Night Football, it's Dak's face. It's not even a question, Micah Parsons. So it's just, we'll see. Now, they feel pretty good about their infrastructure. Xavier McKinney, there were some questions, fit right in. There's a big difference, though, in the amount of money Xavier McKinney's making in this guy. Who knows he's untouchable?
Yeah, I mean, Micah's a personality. You see it in the podcast. I think he's not going to get in trouble in Green Bay, and not like he got in a lot of trouble in Dallas. But, Micah's a personality, and I think when you have a weak coaching staff or a weak head coach, which Schottenheimer is, I think my take was if this team started 1-5 and you sign Micah to a big deal, I think Dallas is going to be atrocious. I really do. I think.
Why are people acting like they just traded Lawrence Taylor? Because that's not what they just did.
Well,
they weren't any good.
Well, here's the other thing: if you were paying Dak 44 instead of what you're paying him, then you guys could have met at $45 million. All the problems here start, and we know this, John. It's hard to win when you pay Josh Allen top of the market salary. Okay, it's hard. You're not going to have that second slot receiver or that third really dependable, interior linebacker. You lose. I mean, you've seen this over the last couple of years that Buffalo has moved off multiple veteran players in the secondary.
Half their team last year.
Yeah, well, and they're still winning with Josh Allen. And Josh Allen took a reasonably team-friendly deal. Dak is a B quarterback making A+ money. So he needs an entourage. He is not Josh Allen, Lamar. So the problems all stem from you massively overpaid a B quarterback, and So, I mean, we people, and this is the case, the younger the media people, the more they report, pay the player. They're always pro player. I have learned something over my life that, like, the Rams could not trade Jared Verse. Like, this kid was defensive rookie of the year. Like, everybody's got a guy. Even take out the quarterback. There's a guy like Saquon Barkley to Philadelphia. They could win if he left, but boy, is with Jalen Hurts in the pocket sometimes a little tenuous if you trust him. They're just guys you can't move. I will defend the CD Lamb contract. I think he's a top 5 or 6 receiver. He's a playmaker. I just I wasn't comfortable making Micah the highest paid defensive end. I've seen him in a couple of playoff games. He has been invisible in those games against better offensive linemen.
Because they run right at him, and that's
Right,
not his
right
thing.
at him.
So how do I pay a guy? Now I get what the Packers need. I think it's easy for Jerry to go, well, I'm going to give a guy 47. I'm going to match this contract for a guy who's a liability in the run game, and the Packers need that. And Rashawn Gary's a much more complete player. I also defend the Cowboys. The timing, I don't. I mean, I would have traded him before the draft, but clearly they weren't planning on doing it then, right? He thought he could get a deal done at $40 million. But when you trade him now, they go, how did they only get that? Well, as someone told me in the league a couple years ago, they said, this isn't the NBA, but players now have more juice than they ever had.
Yeah.
20 years ago, a team would have been like, hey, even if the contract's not done, we will trade for this player if you're over him, and we'll figure it out. We have his control. They're not doing that anymore. So if I'm going to trade multiple ones, there has to be signed at the bottom line. Well, so Micah Parsons kind of had a big, part in Mulgeta in where he went, because you go, well, you could have got more from Team X, the Lions, the Raiders, whoever. That they would have given 2 1s, 2 2s, and a player. Well, if they were offering $20 million less than the Packers salary, he goes, well, I'm not signing that contract when this contract's on the table. So let's just say there was another team willing to pay an extra high draft pick, but the money they go, we're not paying him $47 million a year and 140 guaranteed. We'll give him 120 guaranteed. Well, he's like, I'm not signing that. Well, then they're not going to trade him there, right? Because that team's like, well, the trade it's not on the table then. So Parsons, there was an NBA element of he got to dictate a little bit where he went, because you were going to sign the contract the moment you traded him. Khalil Mack, several years ago, the Bears, they signed when the trade is done. So the contract is a huge part of the negotiation. So when I see all these people, how'd the Cowboys only get this? Because Parsons dictated the terms by the contract, and clearly, I would imagine some of the teams very interested were nowhere near in the ballpark of what the Packers gave them. And this is what makes the NFL so unique. This team without an owner in the middle of nowhere can pay a guy a historic amount of money. I mean, it's like the opposite of baseball, which is cool and it's part of the NFL, but pretty risky deal. I mean, this is, I give Gudikins a lot of credit, but he's kind of laying it all out there on the table on this one.